horrible. The future looks bleak. Remember our childhood to get us through the week. We're getting re-enthused. Back to the past and the things we used. We all know that our pasts were great, escaping the things that today we hate. Getting re-enthused, getting re-enthused, getting re-enthused, getting re-enthused.
Okay, so we're over by the monitors and we'll just turn on the Pippin. It's quite loud and I don't know if it'll be picked up by the microphone, but if it does, well, you won't be able to miss it. So power's on, and what you'll be able to see first is the kind of Pippin welcome screen. And if it's the first welcome screen, there are two. Ooh, there you go, you'll see that there's the mouse pointer. I'm moving that with the trackball, so yeah, that's kind of cool. So we'll just eject the CD and we'll just put the first disc in. The CD is also really loud and those soft buttons on the top do not always work. So right, first CD is going in. I don't know what these are, I haven't actually labelled them. They are copies because I've never found some original software that I've managed to buy. The Pippin itself in the box came with a whole bunch of software, mostly things like educational bits and just some helper stuff, and the internet package as well, so all of the gated community software. So I think this is probably the web browser. Now what I did is I downloaded a beta version of the web browser, so I've only ever used the original one. And you can see this looks like the Apple Mac, because it is basically Apple Mac. Okay, so this is a version of Mozilla, obviously licensed by Bandai and made by them. And this is obviously trying to connect via modem because there is no Ethernet port on this. And yeah, I kind of expect that to fail because it's not even plugged in. But you see, this is kind of the web experience on this, and it's quite old. If it could, oh my god, it's trying to load up Alta Vista. Now, if you're of a certain age, you may not even know what Alta Vista is, but Alta Vista was kind of the first big search engine that came out. I used it for a long time. Yeah, Digital.com, a company I used to work for actually, for a short time. They used to make mainframes mostly, but they had quite a large amount of the internet infrastructure as well. So yeah, so that's interesting. So we'll move on to the next thing. Here we go. So this is Marathon. So we've got choice of Marathon and Marathon 2. So let's just load up the old Marathon. It's quite, if you've never played Marathon before, you can get free versions of it. It's basically open source now. Bungie have open sourced it, and all the maps and stuff are available on their website. And it's worth playing, especially if you are into Halo, because a lot of the mythology that led on to Halo started here. So you can find quite a lot of stuff that is very reminiscent of Halo, and even things that you could consider kind of to be backstory to Halo. So you can only use the digital pad, but the shoulder buttons. Oops, let's fire. Let's fire. But the shoulder buttons do act as a strafing control, so that's kind of. Ooh. So it's, you know, it's not amazing, and plainly the window's been made small so that it runs with decent performance, but it's still pretty good. Can I access this monitor or not? Oop, no, I'm just shooting them. There we go. I made a port of this of the engine. It's called the Aleph 1 engine for an old open source handheld called the GP2X, and getting these screens to work on a fairly low resolution one was a pain. It turned after I left the GP2X market for a while, and it turned out that I'd forgotten to implement the swim command. That was quite funny. So yeah, so you see some of this stuff. It's there's a lot of information, and there's also some backstory if you read it as well. So yeah, so that's Marathon. Like I say, it's all right. You know, for the time, it may not have blown away people that were using PlayStation and the Saturn at the time, but it was still a good game and a fairly good port. So anyway, on to the next one. I'm going to skip the intro. I don't think it's particularly interesting. Okay, so yeah, let's create a new player. Let's just use all the defaults. Begin mission? Yeah, there we go. Okay. I've only ever played this briefly. Yeah, this is the Japanese version of the game. I will say, you know, in terms of the FMV acting of the day, this isn't bad. This is a slight improvement on the general FMV acting. I mean, that's not saying a huge amount, admittedly. I come up to the bad guys now, and oh, we're getting over land as well. Here we go. I think these are just rendered. I don't think these are rendered 3D, are they? I think they're just 2D. Maybe if I don't blow them all up immediately, then I can't blow up the pyramids. Oh, let's get close to this one so we can actually see. I can't tell. I mean, if they are genuinely 3D, and I think they might be, then that's not bad because they're fully textured. I mean, still, it's not really a patch on what the PlayStation and even the Saturn were doing at the time, but not terrible. It's also just of course realising it's a very sparse environment as well. There's not an awful lot going on. I'm now entirely out of bullets. Oh, I got refills. It's hard to hit them because even the slight touch on the digital pad just basically turns you a load. So actually aiming on someone is really hard. The Pippin is an interesting machine, but more I think from a historic viewpoint than anything else. The games on it aren't really much more than cheap Mac ports anyway, and this is kind of the thing because the Mac in its day wasn't particularly well known as a games machine. I mean, it's not now either, but kind of more so back then. So although it was relatively easy to port simpler games from the Mac to the Pippin, there weren't many to port to start with, and not many people took Apple up on that anyhow because there just weren't the sales. And I think that's the third thing, really, the third nail in the coffin for it. Other than the price and its just inability to compete with the other machines on the market, there just wasn't the software. And I guess that's part of everything else. The software wasn't there just because there was no market share. But it's an interesting enough machine. If you can get it cheap, like I say, it's a good historical piece of kit, and it is nice, and I think it looks quite nice, and it is really a very weird Mac in a case, and for that it's kind of worth owning as a kind of a serious retro gaming machine. There really just isn't any title worth getting it for, and the difficulty of getting original software for it as well. This is the particular killer for me with the Pippin. I like to own the original software as much as possible, and just even finding it for this machine is so hard, let alone buying it. So for that, I can never really recommend it as a retro gaming machine. But as just a collector's piece, if you just want something to put on a shelf that looks nice and has got a real kind of historical feel to it, then yeah, it's worth getting if you can get it for a decent price. That's getting hard now, but if you can, then yeah, it's well worth it. I mean, especially if you get one of the black units from America or from Europe. Although I've never personally seen one for sale, but I do know that they go for crazy money when they do. But if you can get one for a decent price, it's worth getting for that. Yeah, so thanks for watching. If you liked it, please hit like. If you really liked it, please hit subscribe. If you didn't like it, please let us know why, and we will try to improve. Thanks very much. Bye.